Good evening, everyone. I will call this meeting to order. This is the General Plan Advisory Committee meeting of November 13th, 2025. I'll do the roll call first. When I say your last name, just let us know that you're here. Bailey? Brown?
Here.
Comachero? Here. Elliott? Evantov?
Here.
Flores?
Here.
Joyce?
Here.
Kingsburg?
Here.
Lecters?
Here.
Lieberman?
Here.
Luker?
Here.
Marine?
Here.
Monroe?
Here.
Kazeta?
Here.
Tiss?
Here.
Vadra Kajur?
Here.
Valdez? And Wilson. All right, tonight's agenda is regarding circulation and mobility. Under business, we have 3 sections. The first is going to be an overview of the circulation element process. Then there'll be a small group activity, and then a wrap up and report back by the members. So we're going to do some small group sessions. But we're going to begin with public comments, and we have 15 minutes for public comments, and we have 5 speakers. So we'll do 3 minutes each. And our first speaker is Louis Todd.
Thank you very much. My wife and I live in a homeowners association called Los Ranchitos here in Temecula. We arrived in Temecula in 1986 before there was a traffic signal anywhere in town. We've made this our home for the last 39 years. Los Ranchitos Homeowners Association is an equestrian neighborhood. It was formed in 1966 and probably one of the oldest neighborhoods in the city of Temecula. Our ask tonight of you is to please stop the planned widening from 2 lanes to 4 lanes in front of our homes, specifically Inez Road, La Paz, and Deportola, between Santiago and Margarita Roads that run through the center of our neighborhood. Why are we asking for this? Safety, of course. Our home driveways connect to one of these roads, Inez, La Paz, or Deportola. We have no buffer zone between that, and so our driveways connect directly onto the road. It's very unsafe exiting and very safe actually getting off the road into our homes. What have we done about safety to date? The speed limit was reduced from 45 to 40 after a 12-year effort just last year. It's important and it's a good improvement, but it's still not safe in front of our driveways. We've asked for no passing signs to be installed, and that's helped. Most of the homeowners that live in our neighborhood experience getting passed through our neighborhood on a daily basis. A second planned roundabout is at Jedediah Smith will be coming in 2026, and we've been told that we can reevaluate the speed limit at that time. So who have we talked to about our concerns? The City Council, the Planning Commission, the City Manager, Public Works Department, and the City Traffic Safety Commissions have all heard our request to protect the safety of our neighborhood and your fellow citizens. The Los Ranchitos neighborhood is home to people just like you, men, women, parents, children, grandchildren, great-grandparents, and of course horses and other pets. We've been told that you can help. We've been told by every city official that this is the time and place to speak to you about asking for your help. And so what we're doing is simply asking if you could please remove the widening planned from 2 lanes to 4 lanes on Inez, La Paz, and Deportola between Santiago and Margarita Roads, shown in the current general plan, the circulation element, and the capital improvement plan. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Alan Hazelton.
Good evening, everyone. I also live in the Los Ranchitos neighborhood. I live on the south side of Deep Portola, just a few parcels to the west of the hospital. My front room has a clear view of Deep Portola, and every day I watch speeders, less than it was, but they're still out there, but I'm noticing an increase in commercial vehicles. These are double tractor trailers, rock trucks, cement trucks, etc., and it's getting busier and busier. Entering and exiting our properties, as Mr. Lewis Todd said, is becoming dangerous. You know, these guys, especially when they come down the slope to the east, they're hauling butt. And then even worse is trying to turn into our driveway. Our driveway's a little bit narrow, so as we turn in and people come right up on us, they flip us off, they honk their horn. I just think it's irresponsible to widen the road because, in my opinion, we widen the road, I can see the speed limit going up, and then what's the next step? Is there going to be sidewalks, street lights, stoplights, changing the complete dynamic of our community? And lastly, I want to say, has there been an environmental impact report to deal with traffic, safety, pollution, and noise for our homes? Thank you, that's all I have to say.
Our next speaker is Eric McKillicas.
Thank you, committee members. My name is Dr. Eric McKillican. My wife and I, Dr. Jennifer Rosenberg, reside in Los Ranchitos as well. We're residents and business owners of Temecula, and we have made this our forever home. I'm also a board member for the Los Ranchitos Association, Homeowners Association. As it was mentioned, the community itself of Los Ranchitos was established in 1966, and the infrastructure of that, what is considered an artery, La Paz, Deep Portola, has the number 67. 67 driveways entering and exiting. Each parcel has about 2, so that's about 34, 35 homes that have to manage going in and out of their driveway multiple times a day with traffic that gains up to 60 miles an hour easily, 50s to 60s. It's actually pretty scary putting your trash cans out on the road. Imagine being scared to put your trash cans on your curb. It's not a question of if we get hit. It's kind of like there's going to be a day, right? Currently, we have equestrian trails, about 8 miles of them. When I gave this speech last month, I looked up at the seal in the other room, and it was the city crest. And it said on there to old traditions and new opportunities. And on there was a picture, an emblem of grapevines and horses. And I was hoping to have some pictures, but I thought, you know what, I'll just pass them around. This is off of the city webpage. You may notice the riders, myself and my wife. She's much better looking than I am. But that's off the city webpage. They asked us to do on Los Ranchitos Trail, they asked us to do a photo shoot that they could then represent the essence of Temecula. And so I'd like to just share that with you as one of the things that we want to preserve our old traditions as this goes. So one of the things that I'd really like to just mention quickly before I wrap up is about safety. It was about 3 or 4 years ago that we got a phone call from our neighbor, Alan, and a truck, about 10 o'clock in the morning, at a very high rate of speed, non-alcoholic related, smashed into our wrought iron fence, taking out the concrete pillar, the fence, the other concrete pillar, the concrete mailbox, and the rest of the fence. And I'm just going to pass you around pictures of that day. That's at a speed of about 45 when that was set. If we widen this road, it's going to go up. On the inside of that fence line is our garden and our orchard. And who is in that every day is my mother-in-law, my grandchildren, our nieces and our nephews, my kids. We're gardening and we're working in there every day. So safety is really a big concern for us. I'm going to let my wife, who's speaking next, speak to how we get the trailers in and out due to time. But I really appreciate your time and consideration of these, and please enjoy the photos. They speak 1,000 words. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Jennifer Rosenberg.
Hello, you guys. I'm Dr. Jennifer Rosenberg. I'm a veterinarian who actually has many patients in this neighborhood. To me, it's very important to keep the safety up for these patients. These horses that I work with, most of them are very well trained and can handle the roads, the passing of the roads through this trail system that we have, which the city has helped us with many of the trail crossings. But no horse is perfect, right? And the more concrete or asphalt we have in between these trails, the more at risk we are. So chances of slipping, and one of our major concerns as well is drivers passing other cars. For instance, there have been times that we've been passing the roads, many times, to where a car has respected the fact that a horse is crossing, and another driver comes up behind them and tries to cross in the center median. Now, I can't imagine that being any better with the doubling of lanes. So please consider my patients. They're great people, great horses that we want to keep safe as we go forward with this. Secondly, we also have many bikers that come through the neighborhood and joggers as well. Every weekend I see many coming along, so we want to try to consider their safety as well. We want to see how are we going to keep them safe through this transition. Like I said, I'm a vet, so I have a vet truck that I have to come in and out of these driveways all the time. There have been many times there's been scary instances with that. But even worse is when I have to pull my trailer in and out of my driveway. I have a 40-foot trailer. Yes, I have a Class A license to pull that. And I have to basically stop traffic both ways to get that trailer both in and out of my driveway. We have to get it out of there at least one of our trailers out of there about once a week for movement of animals, if not more. And I'm not the only one. There's many other people along that road as well. Okay, thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Lee Rozu.
Hello. Thank you for the opportunity to address the GPAC. Just like other people in this room, I'm here to express my concern with the city plans to widen Inez de Portola La Paz. It is a safety concern, mainly. At the same time, it changes the dynamics of our community, a historical area. Widening the road, while might address the issues with the traffic, temporarily will be, because Google most probably will route more traffic through our roads. As of now, Google doesn't even know that speed limit is 40. So most of the time, I get direction to go through the neighborhood when I come off the freeway. And most probably that's one of the reasons. It's faster to go through our neighborhood than to keep Temecula Parkway. Another concern is with big vehicles. We still see huge trucks going on that small street, and there is Temecula Parkway there that can be, it's a major arterial. I don't know if we need two major arterials within a block. I would appreciate it if you reconsider this section of the street and keep us safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Laurel, do we have any more speakers? Okay. All right, I want to begin by thanking the GPAC members for all being here tonight. For your benefit and for the benefit of the audience, this is not the last time we're going to talk about circulation. This is just the start of the conversation. And for the members of the public, if you didn't get a chance to speak or didn't want to speak during the small group exercise, we do have the opportunity for you to gather around the table, and you can give us your written comments, and we'll enter those into the record and into our decision-making. So you'll still have an opportunity to participate. With that, I will introduce Katie Cole from Fair and Peers to facilitate the discussion tonight.
All right, good evening, everybody. My name is Katie Cole. I'm a principal with Fair and Peers. I've got about 22 years of experience doing transportation planning and engineering, and I have had the opportunity to work with the city of Temecula on a number of projects, including in Old Town. I've helped with policy writing, and I really love working in this community, and I really appreciate being here tonight. So my colleague Andrew and I are going to talk about circulation and transportation, and as Matt mentioned, this is the beginning. We're at the very beginning of this process, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the basics of what a circulation element is, what the key components are, what the process looks like. I'll provide a little bit of information about some common transportation terms, things that you're going to see within the circulation element. We'll talk a little bit about the existing transportation context in Temecula, and then and kind of where we're at with the existing circulation element. Following that, we will do a small group activity. So GPAC members, we're going to have you come up and sit around tables and give us some feedback on the existing transportation network. Where are your pain points? Where do you really like to be? Where do you like to travel? Maybe it's in your car, or maybe it's walking or bicycling. You can give us feedback on places that you'd like to have easier access to. So we'll give you some more prompts then. But in addition to the GPAC members completing this exercise, we have the same maps in the back, and we've got some small maps with some space for comments, so you can feel free to, as the public, provide us some comments as well. Once we've done that activity, we'll spend about 40 or 45 minutes doing that. Once we've done that, what I'm hoping we can do for the GPAC members is have you nominate somebody who's at your table to do a little bit of wrap up, and you can all support each other in that, but we'd like to hear a little bit about what you talked about in your small group activity. So with that, let me dive into the elements of a circulation element. So a circulation element is a required element as part of a general plan. A city has to have it. The primary purpose of a circulation element is to evaluate existing transportation facilities and identify what the future network should look like. And so, we heard a lot tonight about Inez and De Portola, and currently that roadway, and which is why we heard a lot about it, is designated as a 4-lane roadway in this current circulation element. We are here reviewing the current circulation element and looking at what future land use looks like and what future transportation patterns will be. And so this is a chance for us to look holistically at the whole transportation network for Temecula. So we're looking citywide, and we'll be evaluating and coming up with updated versions of these maps as part of this process. So typically, the circulation element talks about the roadway system, but it also talks specifically about truck routes. It talks about bikeways, and so it will reference the Temecula Trails and Bikeway Master Plan. It talks about pedestrian facilities, and it talks about other types of transportation modes, including air and freight and transit. So it's a pretty comprehensive look at transportation. It also coordinates with your neighboring cities and regionally. So we look at what regional projects, what does Caltrans have going on the freeway, what are your neighbors up to? And a really important component of your circulation element is identifying goals, objectives, and policies specific to transportation. So this is where you set your rules for transportation. And in Temecula, the rules, your current circulation element, is really used day to day by city staff to help make decisions about the transportation network. It's reflected in the CIP. It's also reflected when a development project comes in and is trying to figure out what transportation improvements they need to make. The circulation element is an important part in the decision making, and the goals and policies that are in there help guide those decisions. There are some rules that the state has for what a circulation element must include. So all circulation elements around the state have to include these things. They're usually regulated through bills that have been passed through the state legislature. And so a couple notable ones specifically for the circulation element are Assembly Bill or AB 1358, which was the California Complete Streets Act. I'm going to talk a little bit about complete streets in a moment, but basically your circulation element has to take a multimodal perspective. It can't focus on just one mode over another. And so the city has already taken steps to comply with this. You've got a complete streets policy that you adopted fairly recently within the last 2 years, which was a step that was needed and is part of supporting this requirement. Senate Bill, this is a newer one, Senate Bill 932 requires that circulation elements address safety using the Safe Systems Approach Framework, which is from the Federal Highway Administration. So what that would include is looking at crash history and providing some information about where we're seeing crashes today. And then finally, Assembly Bill 98 and a very recent bill, Bill 415, I think it just was signed into law as of the beginning of this month or end of October. It's all about truck circulation. And so a city must identify truck routes within the circulation element. The current city's circulation element already does that, but our job will be to review and look at what those truck routes are and make sure that those are still making sense, they're in the right spots, and there's some specific requirements as part of this bill for us to look at, are there any truck routes that go by schools or other sensitive uses, and we might want to reconsider those truck routes, and so we'll look at that. So here's the process. We're way at the beginning, so we're in the existing conditions phase. We're looking at existing transportation conditions. We're identifying the regulatory requirements that we have to follow. We are getting input from and what the regional agencies and your neighbors are doing to try to help us understand what's happening next door. And so that's where we're at right now. So we're at the very, very beginning of this. The next step is really goal setting. So it's taking a look at what the current goals are that are in the current general circulation element of the general plan. All of those were included in your homework packet. So if you took a look at that, you saw all of those goals and all of the goals anyway in there. I didn't include all of the policies, but and then when we really get into kind of figuring out what the future should look like, the first step to that is really understanding the land use. And so that is part of the land use element for the circulation, for the overall general plan. That land use gets fed into some models that we have to help us understand what transportation will look like in the future. And that really helps us understand how big the roads need to be to accommodate traffic. It also allows us to figure out the other modes, what might we need for other modes as well. So once we get to that stage, that's where we'll be kind of reconsidering and looking at how many lanes we need on different roadways or what the classification is of those roadways. That will lead us to a new version of the maps that you see on these tables today, where we're figuring out what the future transportation network should look like and what the functional classification and capacity of the roads need to be. So we talked a little bit about some of these, like complete streets, but some really common terms that we use as transportation planners are shown here. The first is level of service, and this is the metric that we as traffic engineers have used very historically. It measures vehicle delay and congestion. The image here is for an intersection, so if you think about it, level of service A means there's no congestion. Level of service F means there's gridlock, it's over capacity. Where we really want to shoot for is, and we usually measure this for commute time, so this isn't like all day long. What we're trying to measure is how bad does it get during typically it's the peak commute times, which generally are from 7 to 9 in the morning and 4 to 6 in the afternoon, although I know that things spread out a little bit beyond that. But so this is a tool that helps us understand how congested the intersection is or the roadway is and whether or not we need to add additional capacity. So we really do try to shoot for, during those peak hours, a level of service D or so. If you have level of service A during your peak hours, it means you've overbuilt your roads and now you have to maintain all of that pavement, and it's not a very good use of resources. So It's a little unfortunate that we use this school grading system for this because LOSA sounds great when really it just means that you've got a lot of extra space out there that you don't necessarily want to maintain. But the next common term that we use is vehicle miles traveled. This is a measure of how far we drive. I like to think of this as my odometer. This is how far do I need to go to get to my basic services like the grocery store, to my work, to my kids' school. And this is an important measure now because the state of California has developed a lot of regulation around this measure. The idea is that if we build land use in more compact ways and we put people's everyday needs close to them, that we'll all need to drive less, and that's a good thing. So this is a metric that we'll have to look at as part of the general plan, specifically within the EIR for the general plan. And then finally, we talked a little bit about complete streets. This is simply the concept that a street should accommodate all types of modes, reflective of the context. So if you're in an industrial area where there's no pedestrians, sure, you may not need to provide the widest pedestrian facilities. But in most places, the chances are is that you're going to have somebody who might need to walk. You may have somebody who needs to bike. And so it's a basic accommodation of all of the modes to the best of your ability and within the context that's there. Another really important concept is roadway classification, and this is a standard set of types of roadways that we use kind of within traffic engineering to identify the hierarchy of the street network. So an arterial road is a major street. Its primary purpose is throughput, so it's trying to get people from point A to B, and ideally, if it's an arterial street, it doesn't have a ton of driveways on it. It's really prioritizing travel time. It's trying to get you with as least friction as possible from the beginning to the end. A collector street is the next in the hierarchy, and its primary purpose is providing land access. So these are the roads that should have driveways on them, direct access to land uses. And then finally, kind of in this system and with what's in Temecula's circulation element currently, we have a rural highway classification. This is for the outskirts, getting to the rural areas of the city. The other roadway that's an important one is local streets. So I don't have this shown on here because most of your streets that are in your neighborhoods, those are local streets. They have direct access to people's homes' driveways. They're usually 2 lanes. They're typically slower, 25, 30 miles per hour. Often have on-street parking. So just very much a street that provides direct access to our homes. And I'm going to take you through some examples within Temecula of these different classifications so you can kind of get a feel for what they mean. So Temecula has a couple of different types of arterials. So the urban arterial, which is the widest arterial in Temecula, is 8 lanes, usually has a median down the middle of it. This example is Winchester Road. So this is, if you've driven down Winchester Road, what you know is that driveway access is pretty limited to signals. There's not a lot of opportunities to get in and out if you're not at a traffic signal. If you are getting in and out, it's probably only right in and right out. And that's because the purpose of this roadway is to try to get people in between those signals with as little friction as possible. The next type of arterial road in Temecula is the principal arterial. These are 6 lanes. These also typically have a median, a raised median, so whether it's landscaping or concrete. The example of this is Rancho California Road. This is east of Inez. And the next type of arterial is a major arterial, so that's a 4-lane arterial. It also typically has a median, so whether it's a painted median or a landscaped median, the median is where the left turns happen. A secondary arterial is 2 to 4 lanes, various median treatments, usually a painted median. This is Pauba. It's a good example of a secondary arterial. And so now moving into some other types of roadways. So a collector, this is a 2-lane collector. It's not divided. It might have a painted 2-way left turn lane. It might not. So this is Overland Drive west of I-15. And I don't have an example of a local, but a local is a 2-lane road with homes usually fronting it, driveway access. And so with that, you've now gotten up to speed on transportation terms, what's contained in a circulation element. Andrew's going to talk a little bit about existing transportation context in Temecula.
Perfect. Thanks, Katie. Yeah, we wanted to give an overview of how people travel within the city currently, just to give a context of the existing needs and the way people travel, because ultimately this general plan circulation element or mobility element is a reflection of the future of transportation in this city to serve existing and future needs for how the city grows and develops. So from the previous GPAC meeting, we've had transportation input provided. We know that traffic flow and safety are very important. Obviously, several neighborhoods like Los Ranchitos do experience cut-through traffic from the highway. People are concerned about safety around schools, e-bike safety, making the city more bike-friendly, and really wanting to review the capacity and roadway designations for what's in the existing general plan from 2005. So to just give context of how people travel within the city currently, about 23% of residents actually, of working residents live and work within the city. So about a quarter of people who live here. And then of those who travel outside the city, we have about a third heading up I-15 to the north, 29% going up 215, and then around 14% doing the longer commute to the south to San Diego. So there is a significant amount of residents who are traveling over 25 miles to work, around 60%. Longer distances of traveling translates to higher vehicle miles traveled per resident, but Temecula actually has a vehicle miles traveled that's similar to neighboring jurisdictions like Menifee and Murrieta, and is actually lower than the Riverside County or Western Riverside County average. And then of those commute times, those longer, shorter commutes, 25% of residents are traveling less than 15 minutes, so that aligns pretty closely with that statistic of who lives and works in Temecula. And then 36% of working residents are traveling a much longer commute, over 45 minutes to get out of the city. Obviously, there's a lot of trips being made by vehicle. 89% of trips are typically done by vehicle, but that means that there is a good amount of trips that people are doing walking, biking, potentially taking transit. And the city does have an extensive and expanding trail and bike lane network and options to help facilitate some of those other modes of transportation. How the dependence or the use of private vehicles translates on Temecula's existing roadway network is that some of the key facilities that provide access to other land uses within the city or to those regional commute networks like I-15 and I-215 are where we see current congestion to date. So for example, Temecula Parkway, Rancho California Road, Winchester Road, especially near the freeway ramps, are pretty significantly congested, as I'm sure everyone is aware. That results in lots of pass-through traffic in neighborhoods where those routes are available. And in particular, we see it especially on those east-west corridors within the city, because there are really only those 3 routes. Now we'll move to talking about circulation element goals. You know, the goals of the circulation element are to really facilitate, given the existing commute patterns, trends, and then what we see in the future for the city on how people travel, how should this circulation element look? How should this roadway network look in the future to facilitate the city's travel needs? So currently the city has goals to maintain level of service D, like Katie was saying, not gridlock, but certainly not an underutilization of the infrastructure, making sure that the regional transportation system can handle the traffic within the city, that it accommodates safe and efficient movement of people, as well as goods and trucks, and then that there are safe, efficient alternatives to driving throughout the city, and looking at enhancing traffic safety as well, and providing enough private and public parking to meet the needs of visitors and residents across the city. So back in 2005, with the current circulation element and general plan, the envisioned roadway network is displayed here. We've put a solid line on portions of the roadway network where the designation, basically what was envisioned for that roadway in terms of number of lanes, that roadway is meeting that designation, and then a dashed line for roadways which are not currently meeting that designation. So the dashed line does not mean the roadway does not exist. What it means is that it doesn't meet the designation. So Winchester Road, for example, heading east to French Valley, is dashed because in the current circulation element, it's called to be 8 lanes for much of its length, and currently a lot of that eastern section is just 6 lanes. So that's what that means in the context of this visual. And then on this slide, what we've tried to do is outline the progress the city has made to date in achieving the vision that was set out in the current circulation element. And we've called out some key projects that have been completed. For example, the widening of Pechanga Parkway, which was done not too long after the completion of the last circulation element, the completion of Butterfield Stage Road, widening at Rancho California, Winchester, and Temecula Parkway close to the freeway ramps. And then there are some smaller ones in here. So De Portola, it may not have been, I think, widened with extra pavement width, but restriped to have a 2-way left turn lane in the middle. And there are several of those as well, such as along Pauba Road. Importantly, some of these have been achieved through capital improvement projects undertaken by the city. Others have been achieved and implemented through the work of developers who were developing in the area and conformed to the vision of the general plan circulation element. And then lastly, we wanted to touch on the multimodal transportation network. What we have illustrated here is the existing and planned bikeways and trails as envisioned in the most recent Trails and Bikeways Master Plan, which was completed a few years ago by the city. So like Katie said earlier, this is something that will be referenced within the update to the circulation element and is a separate document that envisions the future of trails and bikeways within the city. So with that, I will turn it back to Katie to explain what our group activity is going to be.
All right, thank you, Andrew. And just a side note, Temecula is not shaped well to go on slides. It's very difficult to get it on a slide. It's very long and skinny, which I wish is how I describe myself. But we are going to split into actually 3 groups. So GPAC members, we're going to split into 3 groups. Each group, we're going to assemble around the maps here, and we've provided some Post-it notes, some markers, where you can provide us some feedback on the existing roadway network. And just a couple of prompts here. So firstly, this map displays the current circulation element classifications and whether the roads meet the classifications. So what Andrew described is that the solid line means that the roadway is already built to its full width. It already meets the classification that was envisioned in the 2005 circulation element. If it's dashed, it means most commonly what it means is that it doesn't have quite the number of lanes that were envisioned. So it might be envisioned as 6 lanes, but it only has 4 lanes. So that's what you're looking at on these maps. Some of the things that we're hoping to hear from you about are places where you experience congestion. Did we get it right? I mean, I think that it's pretty obvious around the I-15 interchanges. It's very busy and crowded and over capacity, but where are the other spots where you experience congestion? Something that does occur and we're aware of is when people plug into Waze or Google, it'll send them to all kinds of interesting spots. So curious what your experience has been. Where are you seeing people do cut-through moves? Are they coming through your neighborhood and trying to avoid the freeway? I'm sure that's happening. It is a very common thing that happens. Where are your favorite places to bike and walk? And then where do you drive regularly? It's helpful for us to just know if you've got some spots where you're going every day, maybe it's part of your commute, or where you take your kids to the park, or where you're going to the gym or whatever you're doing. But where are some of the places where you drive regularly, and what are your experiences there? So that's the activity. We'll go ahead and get you split up here. And I think, oh yeah, please.
Thank you. I have quite a few questions of staff and the consulting team.
Sure.
When are we thinking we might want to tackle that?
I think we can take a few questions before we
Sure.
begin the exercise.
Yeah,
Ju-
wonderful.
Just a few?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, because we've had quite a bit of testimony here from Los Ranchitos on the Yanez Road widening and also De Portola. The roadway classification on that is a secondary arterial, which is a 4-lane. That particular section under Standard 113 actually prohibits residential driveways. So the fact that we have residential driveways on this classification of roadway is a little concerning. So I wanted to call that to your attention. It's actually noted in the standard. So I wanted to have maybe staff confirm something on that or put it on the list.
Duly noted, Sherry.
What?
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. On the regulations that you briefly brushed over, and there's a lot of them, are we seeing anything from the state on support funding to additionally fund the local agencies and cities that are burdened with, having to provide and assess the impacts of the Senate bill, specifically with the housing?
So the bills that I provided in this package are all related to things that need to be in the circulation element. You're undertaking a circulation element update, and so those were things that we anticipated, and so we'll comply with.
Yeah, they all cost money.
Of course, there are lots of regulations coming from the state, and I think in some cases, yes, there is funding available. So like, for example, on the Complete Streets side, the state does a nice job of offering grants to, put in bike facilities or improve pedestrian facilities, et cetera. But in terms of other state regulations that require housing or different things, they're slightly out of my wheelhouse. Yeah, not always. And I think that might be the point of the question. But,
Yeah, putting it on staff's
but
radar.
Yeah.
On the Senate Bill 99, has there been coordination with CAL FIRE on this? As far as primary and secondary?
The city has done has already looked at evacuation related issues, and WRCOG is also doing a region-wide effort to identify neighborhoods that only have one access, for example. So we will utilize that work that's already done as part of this circulation element and not redo work.
Oh, okay, so specifically to CAL FIRE, probably not?
So we have a recently updated local hazard mitigation plan, and we're working on an evacuation safety route plan. Both of those will be integrated and included with the circulation element.
Okay. Incorporating input from CAL FIRE?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Couple minutes. Huh? I know. It's just getting them to agree. On some of these classifications, I know a lot of them were actually, some of our improvements that were done by developers. Is there a way we could color code perhaps one of our circulation maps to indicate which of these are on the CIP 5-year plan and where they are in that 5-year plan versus what's being paid for by development funds? And last question, I swear, probably not, but on the new VMT law, are we still, for this new update that we're doing, I assume, I can't see you, but I assume that we're doing an updated traffic impact analysis, right?
The general plan will have an
Yes, with
updated
the
EIR.
EIR
And in that
including-
EIR, we will have to, the metric that we'll need to use for the transportation section is VMT.
So VMT, and just noting that the previous one done in whatever, our last update, I think was 2005, that was LOS based, correct?
Correct.
My question is, what kind of a difference are we going to be looking at, just based on those two separate concepts? And I think the public should.
Yeah, so with level of service, which was what your previous circulation element had to use to disclose environmental impacts, the way that looked was any place where the level of service didn't meet your stated standard, which is D or better in the peak hours, that would have been called an environmental impact, and mitigation would have been provided. The type of mitigation would be increasing the capacity. So it would either be widening the road, adding lanes at intersections. Under VMT, that metric is measuring how far people are traveling. So it's really dependent on the land use plan. And my expectation is that we are going to see, Temecula is largely built out. We're probably going to be seeing land use that is more infill type uses that already have access to services that are nearby. And so we're probably going to see pretty moderate amount of VMT per person for the future land use. And the types of mitigation, if you did have a VMT impact, would be things that are more travel demand management related. So it could be it could be like bike and pedestrian facility upgrades. It could be increases in transit, things like that. So it's definitely a different focus in the environmental disclosure specifically. As part of the circulation element analysis that we're doing out that's not part of the EIR, we will still be looking at level of service. Okay. It's still a very relevant metric to help us understand traffic flow and making sure that we can accommodate drivers and everybody. But we will still be looking at level of service, just not under the guise of is it an environmental impact.
Okay, thanks. That was my main question too, because the miles you travel don't matter whatsoever if you're traveling at a level E of level of service. So, you're just going to be sitting there a long time. I think it's a better matrix.
Yeah.
Okay. Go
Ed.
I had a question about the piloted VMT tax for commuters. Is that projected? I'm just thinking.
You're just curious.
No, I'm not just curious. I'm thinking like 2 decades from now. Is it projected that would impact or dissuade people from commuting, and then we'd have a higher percentage that actually live in the city or work in the city versus travel outside of the area, or is it too early to know?
Yeah, I mean, I think philosophically, yes. The idea with having a tax on how much we drive would ultimately encourage us to not drive as much. I think, the most effective travel demand management strategies are the ones that cost us in either time or money, right? So if the congestion gets so bad that we will no longer accept sitting in that congestion and we either live closer or we work from home more or whatever, right? That means we're not driving. Or if we have to pay to drive farther distances, theoretically that would influence our behavior. I don't know that I think we can make some educated assumptions about what would happen, and the travel demand model that we would be using is WRCOG's travel demand model, or Riverside County's travel demand model, and it does include assumptions about how people will behave, in 2050. It's very speculative, right? Like, I don't have a crystal ball. I can't tell you exactly. And I mean, there's a lot of dynamics here that we just don't know. There's the adoption of electric vehicles, right? Like, if the state's concerned mostly about greenhouse gas emissions, what does having more electric vehicles on the road do for that? Maybe the VMT doesn't matter as much, right? So I think that there's a lot of variables. There's also a lot of reasons why we choose to live where we live, and sometimes that doesn't have a lot to do with where we work, right? So it could be that our kids' friends live there, or the specific school district, or our friends are there. So as a transportation planner and engineer, I'm always thinking about, like, the ideal situation where you live and work and play and do all your stuff, right, in your little bubble. That's not super practical, right? We all have a lot of things we have to do. So we won't set up the model to be this idealistic situation, I guess, is my point.
I think just in response to something that Sherry brought up, thank you, Sherry. I think it would be a good idea to provide the committee with at least the circulation projects out of the CIP, the actual document, because I do think that's critical. I agree. As we look at these maps as we go along, to know where those improvements are coming from, and if we're dependent on developers, how does that tie in to the housing element when we get there? And all
TUMF
that.
also, if you could, the TUMF fee roads and where they sit on the CIP.
The other thing is, take Winchester Road, for instance, which in the 2005 circulation element contemplated 8 lanes and now has 6. We could use the 8. Does the right-of-way exist anymore? We've had significant build-out since the 2005 element. How does that factor in? And not just Winchester, but other areas as well. And if the right-of-way does exist, does the city own it? What's it going to take for the city to purchase it? And, so is it practical really to keep those things, those widenings on the circulation element, if practically speaking, we can't actually build them? And I don't know that that's true, but, something to look at. And finally, I know several years ago, and sometime after the 2005 element, city had a consultant team do a study of an absorption study of commercial, and we found, I don't recall the numbers exactly, Matt, but I think it was something like 4.5 million square feet of commercial retail that could not be absorbed, and that land should be rezoned. Presumably, that rezoning would likely be to residential. What kind of an impact does that have? And that needs to be included in this update as we go along.
Good points. With regard to the projects in the CIP, as we get into the next level of discussion, we'll prepare those maps. And then with regard to the absorption study that you referenced, we've updated that. And when we get into the land use element and the land use discussion, we'll be providing those updates and the absorption capacity for commercial, residential, industrial.
Have we actually rezoned any of those properties from their commercial designation?
So since the adoption in 2005, we haven't done a comprehensive update. This is our comprehensive update, but we've done different projects where we've done rezones. So we can report back on that. An example would be on Yanez Road, often referred to as the Bieri property, was identified for commercial. That did get rezoned by the city to residential maybe 5 years ago. And there are other examples.
Okay. Thanks, Matt.
I think what we can do is we should probably get into the small group discussion. I know there are other questions, but staff and the consultants will be floating amongst the tables, and I think you can ask your questions then. So hopefully that's okay. We'll jump into the discussion.
15. So we need 5 groups of 5 at each table. So You just want to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You'll be a table. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You'll be a table, and then the rest will be at a table. So basically, this side plus 1, and then that far end is at a table, and then this side is at a table. Thank you. And then for the public, we do have maps and little comment pages at the back. Feel free to provide written comments. You can write on the maps. You can write on the Post-it notes. We're going to take all of those and utilize them as part of the process.
All right.
All right, let's go ahead and take our seats. This was great. I think everybody took a little warming up, but then we got really talking transportation. I love it. Before you go back to your seats, designate who you're going to have speak for your group. All right, well, thank you all very much for doing that activity. I know it takes a few minutes to get into it and kind of start thinking about your transportation network. You got to break the ice a little bit, but sounds like there was some good conversation. So we'll go ahead and do what I'm looking for in the report back is just some big picture ideas, places where you see a lot of congestion, roadways that you think could really benefit from improvement, or anything else that you all talked about that you think would be helpful to bring up to the group or really let us know so that we can dig a little deeper into it. So I'm going to start with this group that was at the table closest to me here. All right.
So we had various ideas, and we took a lot into account from Los Ranchitos, and we think we might have some viable solutions. First one being making Santiago Road go through. I think that could be a huge one. Currently, it's washed out and easily accessible from both sides. And then we also thought of the use of more roundabouts could be very helpful to slow traffic down, and down the road that might actually be able to bring down the speed limit on Deep Portola. So about 4 on various different streets, roundabouts going through there. I know there already is another proposed one on Jedediah Smith and medians as well. Yeah, planted, raised, something good looking. And then another one, not pertaining to Los Ranchitos, was Diaz Road, making a right turn onto Winchester. That is frequently gridlocked over there. Did anyone else have any? Sorry, I know there was supposed to be one, but not all.
No, you can have more than one. That's totally fine.
Westbound on Winchester, coming off of the off-ramp, right turn onto northbound Jefferson, right by the car wash area, adding a right turn lane because traffic's backing up onto the overpass. We did.
All right. Any other comments from group 1? Amazing, thank you. All right, group 2, so the middle table here. Who was at the middle table?
Hello, everyone. So, I mean, yeah, looking at the map, there are not a lot of great options out there. But some of the things we did talk about, improving Winchester, if there's possibility to widen. Then there's also the Paba and Rancho Vista roads that could connect to Margarita. The Santiago connection to the Western Bypass. Extending Overland to Diaz. Pachanga Parkway between Deer Hollow, correct? Deer Hollow and Wolf Valley. As far as the Los Ranchitos community, one thing though is we'd love to see if like a impact report, what the safety is, traffic, environmental, all of those things. You know, is there a way where if it was widened, what are the safety precautions that could be put in place, like whether it's stop signs, signal lights, things like that? Like, is there a pathway to make both things work? So those are just some of the discussions we had at our table. Anybody else have anything to add that I missed? No? Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, and group number 3, so I'm assuming that's the back of the room there.
Yeah, we have a couple of things here. The first one is somebody brought up extending Butterfield Stage to Poroy. I believe that's on the general plan now. Is that feasible, given the environmental constraints and going through the protected area?
That is a very good question.
If I had an answer, I would.
Yeah, I wish I had a really good answer for you. So, Butterfield Stage Road traveling north connects to Marietta Hot Springs. And then there's residential development that is part of the Somers Bend specific plan. And then you move out of the city into the county jurisdiction. There are environmentally sensitive areas there. It is identified in both the county and the city circulation element, but those connections need to be looked at more to figure out if they're completely viable. Right now, they're on paper, they're in plans, but making the connection's another story.
Yeah.
Matt, can you allude to a little more about, just briefly, about the environmental concerns? Because usually there's ways to circumvent or work through some of the restrictions there. Because that's a great idea to push through there.
You know, if I may, that was part of the raw pod development back in 2000, 2001, when it was approved. And that area was set aside, I think it was 200 acres, if I recall it, I may be wrong. The developer sold to the city for $1. And the federal government came in and said, you can't do anything with it. There could never be any human contact. You know, we had visions of putting trails and picnic areas and all this. Couldn't do anything. And so that's where that sits today, unless that's changed.
No, that's correct. So part of it was Rorpaw Ranch. It's now Somers Bend.
Right.
And I believe it was an assessment district.
Yeah, there was.
For environmental.
It was a CFD, yeah.
Yeah, so that does complicate things.
I thought that was the whole point of the Riverside County Integrated Plan, was to integrate habitat conservation, infrastructure, land use, and it was like a whole new way of integrating all that. Mm-hmm. And I thought that general plan roads were allowed through there.
Yeah, they do have exemptions in the MSHCP as part of the Riverside County Integrated Plan for infrastructure projects, but that's something we'll take a closer look at and we can report back on.
Thank you. I think the point too is if there are things on the circulation element that logically can never be built, they should come off. It confuses people, creates an expectation that, you know, will never happen. So, okay, let's see. There are a lot of lane crossings on Rancho Cal between I-15 and Target. Who
I wrote that.
we wrote that? Is that's a safety issue, I assume?
Yes, yes. It just people, for some reason in that little section, just drive really crazy. I don't know if they're getting off the freeway, having to go all the way over to turn left on Inez, but you've all experienced all the lane changes in that zone.
Okay. Next is we can use a sidewalk on the east side of Temecula Valley High School, south side of the road there. This was really interesting, somebody brought up, because of the development in Uptown, the Uptown specific plan, the need for some kind of circulation between Uptown and Old Town. And it was brought up that in city of Denver, they have this wonderful system where you can ride the bus for free all down the main area. You just get on and off wherever you want, no stops, runs down the middle of the road. And so something like that could really be beneficial. It's kind of futuristic, but that's what we're doing, right? Okay. On Rancho Vista, add a left turn lane. The problem there is a 50-mile-an-hour speed limit, and because there aren't a lot of left turn lanes, cars are stopping in traffic to make a left-hand lane, and cars are coming up behind them 50 miles an hour, and it's dangerous. So that should be looked at. Bear with me. The general topic of school traffic, I know that not a whole lot we could do in the old days when schools were built. It was out of our hands, but are there simple fixes? Nothing is simple, but are there things we can do to alleviate for a lot of reasons? And it happens at every one of our schools. And so that needs a good hard look. I don't know what the solutions might be. It's difficult. And then we looked very much at the Santiago area, as the other groups did as well. Love to see truck traffic restricted, at least on Di Portola, if not all those roads. It may not be feasible to do all the roads. And we also question whether we can, in this general plan update, reduce the capacity on those roads from 4 lanes to 2 and consider it, I don't want to say temporary, but have it under review periodically, whatever that time frame is or whatever the triggers are, to look at it. So without going through a whole general plan update, that could be reviewed based on what else is going on in the city and how strong the need is, if it does exist, to increase the capacity on those roads. And finally, we talked a little bit at the end about ways to alleviate the congestion on the freeways, knowing that we don't have control of the freeways. But, and we talked about the jobs housing imbalance between our city and areas to the south, particularly all of the San Diego County. They've got all the jobs and we've got all the housing. And so what happens? The freeways get congested. How can we work better with those other jurisdictions, whether it's through satellite offices up here, some of their major employers there, so that we can keep our people closer to home, or whether it's attracting some of those businesses up here. We know San Diego County's not going to like that, but we all have to live together. So, did I miss anything? That's it.
All right, well, thank you very much. I think that wraps up our group activity. We do have, well, first, just in terms of next steps. So as I mentioned, we're evaluating the existing circulation conditions in Temecula. So that includes looking at existing levels of service, looking at the existing classifications, and all the regulatory environment that we have to look at, and that will result in an existing conditions report. And so that's kind of our first step. Beyond that, our next step is to work with the land use element. So the land use element will provide information about what the future land uses are in Temecula. We know what the existing land uses are in Temecula, so we'll feed that information into a travel demand model, and that will be used to help us predict what future traffic volumes will look like. And that's going to be where we're really going to start to dig into how many lanes do we need, what types of level of service are we seeing in the future, et cetera. So that's really the next step that will happen once the land use part of the general plan is kind of at the point where they have an idea of what the future land uses will look like. And then beyond that, you'll, like Matt mentioned, this is the first time that you're talking about transportation. So at all of these different stages, you'll be able to provide input on the circulation element, you'll get to learn about what the future of transportation looks like and what that means for the roadway network and provide feedback at each of those steps. So that concludes the circulation element portion of the presentation. We do have information on kind of the tentative schedule of what topics you're going to get to hear about in these GPAC meetings. My understanding is that the next one is economic development in January. And then as a very good segue, starting to talk about land use and land use alternatives following that. And Matt, I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to mention related to this.
No, I just want to say thank you to the GPAC. Tonight's meeting, it's kind of a warm-up to the challenges we face developing the general plan. As I mentioned before, this is not the last time we're going to talk about circulation, so we're off in December. We'll come back in January, talk about economic development. Economic development is going to relate to land use and circulation, so we'll be talking about these types of things again. And then you can see the rest of the schedule. There are some things that are not on here. I think when we get to a certain point where we need some resolution on some things so we can make recommendations on the land use alternatives, we may have a joint workshop with the Planning Commission. We could have a joint workshop with the City Council. So some of those things are in our future. But as we get a little farther down the line with these things. But just again, we're off in December, back in January.
See a question over here.
Yes, hello. We've all had the opportunity here as the GPAC committee members to speak about, this first phase. I know that the members of the community were also looking at the map and going through things. Is there anything is the floor open to them too as well to kind of give that input as well, because they were looking at the maps that maybe any of us might have looked over certain things that maybe they have found and that could be very essential to this plan, that we could open it up? Is that doable?
If the GPAC doesn't have any other questions, I think we can do that. There were a number of members of the public here. There was the opportunity for them to hand in their sheets, their pages, so we're going to take that, we're going to summarize it, and we'll be sharing that with the consultants. But if a member of the public wanted to get up and share some of their thoughts, I think we can do that. If not, we'll go home early. No, I don't want to discourage anyone. Come on up. Sir, come on up.
I'll just speak from here as a little bit. So I did write the comments.
I think we need you as a mic.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I did put this in the comment section on the form there, but I'm a bicyclist. I bicycle almost every day. I bicycle to LA Fitness, to Europa, to Swing Inn, to Killarney's, and so forth, all over town. I'm also a spoiled bicyclist. I recently moved here from Santa Clarita. Santa Clarita has dedicated bicycle paths all over the place. They're very safe and secure. Here, I know that I'm challenged with traffic, and I'm only aware that there's one dedicated bicycle path that runs along the creek. I would appreciate it if in the planning process, we paid a little bit more attention to bicyclists. And especially, I think, with the increase in e-bikes, I see lots of people out there who normally wouldn't be on bikes. So it's just something that I hope you would consider in your planning process for circulation. Thank you. Oh, and I'm going to talk with Mark also.
Sounds good. Anyone else?
Good evening. It's nice to see you all again this month. Thank you for the opportunity. I wanted to share a couple of words from a neighbor who wasn't able to come down. His words are, "The city of Temecula must have a workable plan to allow horse riders to safely cross Yanez if it is expanded beyond what it is now, more than just a hope and a prayer. The desire to widen Yanez to 4 lanes through an established equestrian community is similar to having a nice schoolyard and then wanting to run a railroad track through just for convenience and hoping that nothing bad happens. And that's from my neighbor, Ted Jacobson. Thank you.
Hi. Some of you know me, most of you don't. Can we bring up the map of the city again? You have all your different colors, either one of them, because I'm going to use it as an example. Looking at your map, and I've lived in the city over 25 years. I live on Cali Medusa, which used to be a drag racing drag strip years ago before we put Walcott in. And I've last, I don't know, 8 years, 9 years of my 37 years as a fireman, I've worked here in the city. So, long story short, we were discussing something over there. The city I moved here right after it became a city. And they did a great job. But a lot of the residential are in planned communities that feed out into some of the streets with 3, 4, 5 exits. Great, because you're able to widen the arteries. But when you talk about where these people live, or even my street, when it was a drag strip, you just have houses and driveways, just like when I grew up down in California, you just had a driveway, right, out on the street. But there are some streets that you could, like Paba and Rancho Vista, that those streets possibly increase the number of lanes both direction, and that may alleviate the need to widen Inez, at least for a while, as an example. Just start looking at some of those options where you're not going to affect their driveway every 50 feet. Or, like I said, on my street, and some of you, like when Jeff was on city council, heard from me often, people run up and down my street. Now, and then when the work's done on Nicholas, that's even going to alleviate my problem on my street, hopefully even more. But that's the same principle as what I'm talking about for them, is maybe just give some alternatives of moving that traffic flow over onto streets like Paba, as an example. You just have people coming out of housing tracts, but not houses along that street, as an example. That's what I'm saying. So you kind of utilize the tracts that were built, that were planned by the council, et cetera, once it went from 45,000 people, or whatever it was, 50,000, when I moved here, to what it is now, 100,000. They added these blocks of houses and fed into feeder streets. And because one of the things, listening to your presentation, you have these times of days that are kind of artificial. And I can tell you how I would say this. Because besides being at work and driving around and whatever, when we go on emergency calls, we get to deal with traffic, like we like it or not. And at any given time, some of these streets in Temecula, except maybe late at night or on Sundays, are a mess. It just 100% is a mess. And so you have to look at that very often, especially on weekdays, going down some of these streets are just, they may not be have the little red, black, what is it, number 8s, whatever they are, whatever, Fs, whatever, but they're pretty damn close. They're E pluses, right? So I would encourage, whether it's anybody from the commission or your staff, where's Mark? I told Mark about that. Hop in a cop car with the deputies, hop in a fire engine, hop into whatever, and take a ride and see what the traffic is at various odd times. So, because sometimes reality is not always what happens when you're trying to engineer this. That's all I'm trying to say. But anyway, my idea was look at some streets that you could use that are off feeder communities versus streets that are the old style streets that have driveways off of them. Anyway, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We'll take one more speaker.
Hello, everyone. I'll keep this brief since I'm sure we all want to go home and avoid the very traffic we've been talking about all evening. But one thing, I first wanted to start by reinforcing what our cyclist mentioned. When I was at the GPAC meetings at the Temecula Valley Library, the more casual ones where the citizenry, we all just came out and we put Post-it notes on the board of what we wanted to see. A big thing I saw pointed out was we wanted bike lanes and we wanted dedicated ones, as you mentioned, that are separate from the road. They're a lot safer. It increases people's confidence in them. They're more likely to take their young children on it. People could bike to school instead of having all of the traffic in front of the schools, as we mentioned. So I would like to see more of that. I'd like to just put that out there for your consideration. And leading off of that, talking about public transit, talking about alternative modes of transit, I believe part of the issue that we have, like we've mentioned, so much of the city has already been developed and the roads are as wide as we can make them in the immediate future. Perhaps another way to decrease traffic that I didn't hear discussed often, but it was mentioned, was alternative modes of transit and what would it take to incentivize people to take them. Perhaps making bus routes more frequent, more stops. I remember at one point I wanted to take the bus to work and the nearest stop was at my work. So it was really a non-option. So I think increasing options like that would get cars off of the road and reduce the need for these expansions, just giving people more opportunities to get where they need to go without a vehicle, less engineering on your guys' end. And then, let me just, oh yeah, and one last final thing. Does anyone else here ever take the road, well, I'm sure we all do, coming down Winchester, you're trying to make the right onto Jefferson, and that one lane merges together and then merges back out again. If we could, I don't know if that is in Temecula's jurisdiction or if that's technically Caltrans, but the number of, I'm a delivery driver, I've taken that route many, many times, and I've seen 18-wheelers go down there. I don't know how they do it without hitting anybody. So if we could please get that in some way modified, that would be really wonderful. So that's all I have, right on the dot, so we can all go home. Thank you all very much.
Any final words, Katie?
No, I don't think so. I will echo appreciation for your participation and your attention and reading all of the homework that we wrote for you. And really thank you to the public for coming out and providing input too. Really appreciate it. And this isn't the last time you'll get to see me. So yeah, we'll see you soon.
Thank you. This meeting is adjourned.